Milliam, it seems like you might have competition after this episode. This fairy is very obnoxious, but lovable at the same time. Cannot get enough of her after watching this, and I'll get into her in just a second, but I want to talk about how in this episode, or how this episode was, it reminded me that we are reaching closer and closer to the conclusion of Reincarnated as a Slime Season 1. This is episode 22. So that effectively means that we have 2 to 3 episodes left for the story. That's really not that long, and from what I've been told from the original source readers, like manga readers and light novel readers and all of that, apparently next episode is going to conclude this arc that we're on, and then there's going to be a, side story episode animated, and then the last episode is to set up, a new story, or the next arc maybe for a season 2. So there's really not much content left, and I'm kind of sad about that, because I'm gonna miss, having, Reincarnated as a Slime every single week, because it's been like this for months now, and now seeing how it's coming to an end, it hurts, it's sad. But all good things eventually must come to an end. I think we all have realized that at this point. But let's get into, will there be a Season 2? Because with finding out now, thanks to the original source readers, and apparently they're going to be animating, a new story on, episode 25 or whatever, that's good news, because that does mean that they might be setting up for a Season 2 announcement, or it could just be a teaser for go read the light novel, one or the other. But I'm willing to bet with how good this series is selling, I've heard that it's getting really good sales in Japan, and it's very popular, that it will probably get a Season 2. I'm not really scared about that. I do believe that the series will one day get a Season 2. Will it be as good as Season 1? Who really knows? But the point is I do believe a Season 2 is in the future because of just how popular this story is. But the question is, how long is it really going to be? Is it going to be a year, 2 years? How much content is really left to animate from the light novel? And can, they actually adapt a whole other, 25-episode season? That is the question I have. But okay, dropping that for now, let's talk about this episode. The fairy that was introduced, or the Demon Lord fairy. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Because I like how the fairy is I'm so powerful, I'm strong, I am terrifying, I can one-punch Leon and all that, and you just see how she's doing shadow boxing. I'm like, oh my god, really? She legitimately thought she was really powerful, and you have Rimuru, he's just analyzing her, looking at her she's really not that strong. She isn't, and he couldn't believe that she was a Demon Lord, and myself included, I really couldn't believe that too, because when I think of a Demon Lord, I think of someone that is all-powerful, someone that can destroy a lot of things. That's what comes to my head, but obviously that is not the case. If there's one thing that Reincarnated as a Slime has really went out of its way to show us, the audience, it's the fact that titles like Demon Lord and Hero isn't really the same thing that we've come to know and love from typical fantasy series, because in this world, Demon Lords are more of figures that just hold a lot of weight or power in the world, and aren't all outright, necessarily evil. There is things to them that doesn't make them evil, they just might have a different alignment compared to what everybody's used to, and they just might have their own country they run, but overall, they're not necessarily evil, because a lot of the Demon Lords that our characters have come in contact with, or mainly Rimuru, they're not really bad people. They might be bad from some other perspectives, but they're really not bad. I mean, when you think about the whole event with the Orc Lord or Orc Disaster, I mean, the only reason why that was so crazy was because he was trying to become a Demon Lord, but he didn't really become one, and he was just being manipulated like a puppet. So overall, I think that wasn't a true depiction of what a Demon Lord was about, and the Demon Lords we have seen, for instance, like Milliam, she is someone that's kind of like an average one. Even though she was called the Demon Lord Absurdity or whatever, she is like an average personality one that's not necessarily evil, but she does what she wants to do. And I think Rimuru definitely fits into that department when it comes to him doing what he wants to do, and he could maybe one day become a Demon Lord. Which, by the way, let's talk about that. So the fairy says that she is a Demon Lord. She fell from grace, and eventually Leon fell from grace as well. It's a title that is bestowed to you. And it's not just like someone going out of their way and is like, you are now a demon lord. It's not something that easy. You can give someone that title, but it's not technically tied to them. And I feel like this system most likely is directly related to the power of names, like naming a certain creature, because as we've seen since the very beginning of the story, names hold a lot of power. For instance, Veldra giving Rimuru his name gave him a lot of power, and Rimuru naming people gives them a lot of power. We have seen this, effect constantly throughout the story. And so I feel like whatever's going on with these titles might also be applied to the naming. For instance, if you're given a title by a certain individual, depending on their status, for instance, this fairy, since she's kind of in the dwelling of souls or whatever, I'm assuming that she potentially could level up your power and give you a whole new abilities that you never thought was possible. That's what I'm assuming. So, seeing how she's like, I fell from grace, and then Leon eventually fell from grace, he was trying to, like, maybe copy me, that's what she was saying, and, he got that title, he was once a hero, it says a lot. And obviously, she's able to turn people into heroes. She kind of implies that, like, I could turn people to heroes, I could bestow the title to people, so she actually implants that onto their very soul. So, yeah, I think that titles are very important, and Rimuru might eventually one day get one of these titles, either a hero title or a demon lord title, but it's also been stated that you can have both titles. Like, you can have a hero title, but also a demon lord title, because that's technically what Leon is. He was once a hero that fell and is now a demon lord, and from what I'm getting, he's both titles. That's kind of crazy to think about. I did not think that Leon was actually a good guy at one point, and apparently he was searching for someone, which let's actually talk about that. So Leon, from what we got from this episode, like his brief motives, he was someone that was constantly trying to summon a certain individual. We didn't get a name or anything, but he was trying to summon a certain individual. And if I had to assume anything when it comes to antagonist/villain-like characters, I'm assuming it has to be a loved one. For instance, like maybe a lover, family member, sister, something like that. It has to be someone that Leon is deeply connected with, and he wants to be able to summon them into the world because he misses them. And so I feel like the reason why he said failure to Shizu when she was summoned was because he didn't call her a failure just as a hero or whatever, or just as a fighter. He called her a failure because he failed to summon the very person he wanted. That's what I'm assuming. It actually gives context to the whole Leon-Shizu scene from the beginning of the story. But anyways, Leon, it's very apparent he never actually obtained what he wanted. He was never really able to summon the person he dearly wanted because he fell from grace, he became a demon lord, and he's not necessarily probably that good of a guy anymore. So there's a lot of things that are out in the air right now. We don't really know exactly, but it's clear as day that Leon at one point in time wasn't necessarily a bad guy, and maybe he might be reasoned with. Who really knows? But he did turn Shizu's life upside down from what he did, so we can't really say that he's completely innocent, even if at one point in time he was a good guy. Now, let's talk about the spirit situation, or the spirit world. So, I like how at the beginning of this episode, the depiction of the dwelling of spirits and hearing the voice from the fairy girl, how that was done, because that really fits along with mythology, because when you think about myths, fairies are terrifying creatures. Normally, in regular fantasy shows, fairies are shown to be good creatures. Creatures of mischief, yes, but overall, they're not necessarily evil. And this is technically correct on the depiction of fairies in myth and ancient folklore, but in reality, fairies are pretty devious creatures. Their concept of good and evil is very different from how humans, view good and evil, and the way they view things in the world is just completely different. And seeing how the fairy girl was manipulating Rimuru or everybody else down this hallway and then leading them all with a voice, it was very fairy-like, and it definitely showed a proper depiction of what fairies really are like in their original lore of where they came from. So little things like that I do appreciate. Another thing to talk about, let's talk about the kids at the end and how they're going to be getting their, their spirits that can turn them into heroes and be able to control their magic. Rimuru states that with his power and how Leon could potentially do what, he can do, separate and can, fuse things, Rimuru's like, I'm determined. I'm determined to be able to separate these kids. If a spirit goes wrong, he wants to be able to separate spirits from these kids and allow them to have complete disconnect where they won't instantly die and end up like Shizu. So Rimuru did tackle that. He did talk about the fact that he did not want them to basically end up exactly like Shizu, and he wants to be able to effectively remove these spirits out of the kid's body if they have a very poor affinity with the children. So that was clarified, and I am very, very thankful for that. But I think that's pretty much about it. I think it was a good episode with the setup with the, the mech and all that, with the, finding out that Vesta fell, but she continued it. I mean, there was a lot of good details here and there, and it was a great episode introducing a very obnoxious fairy. I want more of it. I want more of her. She's a great character, and she might even be better than Millium, in my opinion, in terms of just one of my favorite likable female characters. But for now, I'll end it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below, because for some reason, even if you click the subscribe button, you don't always get notified. So if you do want to get notified for whenever a video is uploaded, you gotta hit that bell icon. And this doesn't go just for me, this goes for all YouTubers on the platform. So if you have a lot of YouTubers you do care about, please go out of your way and do the same thing for them. And so with that, I love you guys, have a wonderful day. Chibi out.